So as a start, can I just ask you to say and spell your name?
It's Ivo Rabell, I-V-O, Rabell, R-A-B as in boy, E-L-L.
Okay. And first of all, I mean, as I think I told you when I was here earlier this morning, this is a project that has to do with the current moment, which people tend to have very strong feelings about, but people might not agree with the most important thing about what that phrase might mean, the current moment in America. So just as a start, can you tell me what that seems to mean to you?
Well, I don't look at America as a whole. I look at Gainesville. That's
Okay.
where I live. That's where I'm at. When I look at, and we're talking about the economy basically. And the economy in Gainesville has always been different from all the economies in the USA because we've always gone with the University of Florida. So in '74 when I started, we had 11% unemployment in this town and we were dying, and yet we made it because the University of Florida grew exponentially. And the reason behind it being that a lot of graduates that were in the Florida Senate were from the University of Florida and they got them going. In '79, we had the same deal. We had a terrible, by '82 it was horrible. To me, that was the worst one that I've ever seen. That was even worse than today. And we had, people tell you 10% on vacancies in town, and we are in management, a lot of it. And most people were running 14%. They were lying through their teeth. And the way you could tell is by going to big complexes and looking at the GRU turnouts and turnouts. And I was going bananas because I had lost a lot of units. I used to have 1,000 units at that time, and I lost a lot of them because the owners decided to manage on their own. Mm-hmm. And to me, that was devastating.
That was in the 80s.
82. Oh. That was around 82, 18% interest rates. It was horrible. Then in '86, they changed the tax laws, and that was pretty bad too. I think 200 banks went under. I don't know exactly. In Florida alone, 2,000 banks to the USA. We went to a spiral in this town. It was in 1989. I think we had 11% unemployment in Gainesville. We were basically at that time. I'm going to say. I think the RTC formed at that time, which was a Resolution Trust Corporation. Gainesville was in bad shape, but again, we had the University of Florida, we had the political will, we had the murders in '90. This town was just depressing, but I was doing okay because I was buying a lot of foreclosed properties and turning them over and selling them. So that wasn't bad for me, but to the city it was pretty bad. And then we had the football team that won. Spurrier won, I think it was the first SEC in '91. And all of a sudden, I mean, this town grew, and I don't know if these figures are right, but 20-some-odd thousand kids, and we went almost to 30 overnight. I mean, everybody wanted to come over here. And from then on, it just kept going great. I mean, 9/11 was bad, 2000 was bad, but it wasn't bad in Gainesville. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've had it very well in this town since, I'm going to say '92, we've grown exponentially. And then we have something now that really, Gainesville-wise, is really hurting us, which is a great president at the University of Florida. His name is Matchman. The main problem that he had the same idea as a guy named Chrysler that we had here a while back, another president. And to me, these are horrible ideas, which is they're trying to make this the Harvard of the South. Chrysler didn't succeed, so he got flown out here. This guy's succeeding because he's done two things. He's brought a lot of money, and the regents love that, to the university. He's brought a lot of MIT professors over here. He's trying to bring a lot of guys from California, since California, from what I understand, are letting them go with a lot of professors. Mm-hmm. And he's brought our football coach, and Urban Myers. And Urban's won 2 national championships. But if you look at any town, and I don't care what anybody says, whether it's and I'm not into statistics or whatever, but if you look at any small town that has won something big, the colleges have grown like we've grown. Mm-hmm. Well, instead of going forward, we're going backwards. We went from 54,000 about 3 years ago to 52 last year to 49.2, and from what we understand, he wants to cut it back 5,000 students more. whether it's to 45 or 47, he really didn't say 3 years ago. But that's devastating for this town. And the reason behind it is, as I recall reading, 30% of all employed people are employed with the state, federal, and which is teachers, cops, University of Florida employees, VA. Very few are in this town are large corporations, which would be the hospital would be one, Nationwide would be the other one. The rest is us. Almost 60% of all people are small businesses. Well, when you start doing that, you're going to hurt the hotels, the restaurants, the attorneys, the insurance companies, real estate, you name it. I mean, we're all going to hurt a little bit. Basically, myself, I'm not hurt. And the reason for it, because I saw it, I didn't see it this bad. I saw the real estate market getting out of hand, so I sold a few of my things. I've got money in the bank. I don't have any worries. I worry for other people that want to start a business now in Gainesville. I mean, what do you do? Any other town that wins 2 national championships, I think someone told me, and I can't tell you their name, but they work for the university, that 100,000 kids applied for the University of Florida 2 years ago, and they accepted less than 6,000. This is new kids. And these figures may not be perfect, and you have to look at, because this is only what I hear from other people that work at the university, but that's pretty bad. And we're not growing, and we know it's 49-2 this year. We know that for a fact, because they even had in the Gainesville Sun. Let's say Gainesville Sun does make a lot of mistakes, but that's so I look at it as a Gainesville deal. I never looked at the economy U.S. wide, worldwide, because I've been here since '74 and I've seen so much garbage going on.
Right.
It really doesn't matter.
But can you say a little bit more about what the last year has been like? I mean, well, maybe even more than a year, going back to when the subprime crisis really started to affect other parts of the country. I mean, how did national trends line up with what you see on the ground here?
What we saw in Gainesville was just people being the press, and mostly people that had a lot of money in the stocks. And what I tell them, it's like in 1998 to 2000, and I go fishing with a group, and we go motorcycle riding every Saturday morning, and all these guys are in their 60s and 70s. That's the OBSC, or Old Boys Scooter Club, and all these guys were professionals, or they're either retired or they're still working. They're not your, no bar too far motorcycle group. These guys don't. I mean, they drink, but it's only at night and on the weekends or whatever. And a lot of them were complaining that, they lost a lot of their 50, 100% of what they were making. But then we start talking to them and saying, wait a second, what did you have before? So, well, I'm back to 2002, or I'm back to making the same kind of money in 2001. Some of these guys made a lot of money in 1998, and they sold out in 2000. And they were going, well, I've still got a lot of money, so I can get back into it. So the perspective is there was so much negative news that brought everybody down, starting last year in September and all the way to March, when the market really hit bad, horribly. I think we went through a period from September of last year until March this year where people were just going, man, is the economy of the USA going to fall apart? And I think the last of Bush, the beginning of Obama did a good job. They stopped this world depression, you can say. And I saw it in everybody, and everybody that I know, got out of it. And they weren't, in other words, they weren't as depressed over the economy as a whole. And once we started coming out of that, and they saw all the things that we're doing. But when you start talking to them on an individual basis, some of them go, man, 1998 was a great year. Others in real estate, I mean, we were making $1,000 a day 3 years ago, and some of these realtors in this town were making a lot of money. And they were going, Jesus Christ, and the fool and his money is soon parted. P.T. Barnum said that, and I agree with him, because a lot of these guys didn't see an end to the market. And I'm going, Jesus, some of you guys been in business 30 years. You don't remember 79, 81, 82 in Gainesville? You don't remember 86, 87, 88, 89? Come on. No one saw the world economy We saw the real estate economy, and they just wouldn't believe it. And so those people, I don't feel sorry for them because they're professionals. I feel sorry for the young kid that never saw it. I feel sorry for the, I think we're 7-point-something% unemployment in Gainesville, and again, I blame that on the University of Florida. Not saying that the President Manchin's a bad guy. I'm just saying that his ideas are not meeting with the community, and the university should be with the community. But, you know, everything's relative.
Right.
I don't make as much money as 3 years ago, but I live the same way as I did in 98 and 2002, and I make the same. Even with inflation, I make good money, and I'm not hurting. I just didn't see myself going out and going crazy and buying a boat and buying a Mercedes and buying 2 new homes and going by the beach and going absolutely bananas. And I do live in 2 states. So
yeah, I want to get to that in a second, but first, I mean, since you are such a long-time resident in Gainesville, can you say a little bit about the feel around the town, not when you're in this office, but just as a citizen of the town when you're out and about?
Well, from September to March, it was pretty bad.
And bad how? Like how in a daily way? How did you see it?
Everybody thought that something was going to happen. You know, you had 2 sides. I have what I call my right-wing friends and my left-wing friends, and we all have that. And the left wing, all they could do was blame politicians or the Republicans. The right wing would always blame, why are we saving all these banks? Why are we saving everybody? Nobody saves me, you know. So you had guys that wanted to see it all fall apart. They don't care. They have a good job. Guys that, and I'm not going to tell you who they are, but they know they can always make money. They have talent, and they know what they're doing, and they know that people need them. Okay, whether it's a doctor or a guy that repairs motorcycles or a guy that repairs cars, or a guy that knows that he's got enough talent to make it. And then you had the other guys that always like to blame. They put the blame on something else, never on themselves. Right. So yeah, you did see that in those months, and it was the news. And I'm telling you, I mean, when the news does it all the time, news gets out real quick today because of the internet, because of all the channels that we have, because of all those things. It was. Yeah, everybody was scared. I was scared. You know, I'm going, geez. Right.
You mentioned foreclosures in the earlier period. Has Gainesville been hit hard this time around on that?
Well, Gainesville, it all depends who you talk to. I don't think we've reached the bottom yet, because what we've done is right now, a lot of the banks are doing short sales. You know, I'm not going to get into the reason behind it because I'm not an economics major, but I will tell you what my thoughts are on it. Basically, you've got a lot of foreclosures that haven't been foreclosed yet. You've got a lot of banks that are just sitting there. And why? Because every bank in the USA, if you ask me, are all basically bankrupt. And if they show 5% of their portfolio, which is in foreclosure, they're not a working bank. So they've got to play the game. They've got to let some of these foreclosures stay on the books and just say, well, it's a non-performing foreclosure, or they've got to tell them there's a short sale, if you know what a short sale is, and just let it sit there. And even though some of us have sold a lot of short sales, we haven't closed them because the banks are picking and choosing which ones they want to choose, which ones they want to close, because they can only close so many. Why? They used to have, and they did away with it, they used to have what was it called? Cash on forgot now. It was the banks were working on the idea that whatever you had in the books, you had to show. So if you had God, I can't remember what it's called now. Cash on cash. I can't remember what it's called. But what they were showing on the books, they were saying, if this is worth $200,000, if I have a mortgage $200,000, it's only worth $300,000. It's only worth $200,000. I have $100,000 loss. And I forgot the word they used, and they did away with it, thank God. And so, because every bank was foreclosed, I mean, every bank was non-performing banks. I mean, they would have less assets than what they were owed. All the assets that come down in value, and I think they're still playing that game. I still think that what they're doing is they don't want to show that they have so many losses every month. I think Florida, Georgia's a deep who? I've got a couple of friends up there, and they're telling me that all the banks up there are really bad off, and they have a different situation because they're more like a lending group in Georgia. They pool their monies together, from what I understand. But in Florida, we have a lot of problems, and I just think they're not shutting the banks down. So you're still kind of scared.
Right. You know, I'm interested the way I mean, there's an entire economic theory embedded in what you've said in the last 10 minutes, which is really great. So, but I'm wondering, as you see it, what percentage of the Gainesville population, not what you see in unemployment statistics or vacancies or that kind of thing, but what percentage of the population right now do you think is vulnerable?
The low income people are not, because they're the state. We have a socialistic, capitalistic society, and even though, to throw my 2 cents worth, capitalism is bad, but it's better than everything else. Okay, there's nothing better in this world than capitalism, even though it's the worst thing that humans have created. The idea that the people that are hurting right now would be your painters, your guys in the industry that really put all their heart and soul in the construction industry. Because in Florida, we dealt with tourism. And tourism creates two things. It creates housing for people coming down, whether motels, hotels, doesn't matter what it is, or people that want to just come to Florida to live for 3 months out of the year. So that tourism industry had completely devastated it. So those are the people that I see, number one. Number two are the people that are working in the tourism industry. All those guys that were working in motels, hotels, I don't care what it is, you can go down the whole gamut, Orlando, Disney and all that. A lot of those people are hurting. Professionals, not as much as everybody thinks they are. I don't know I know in Michigan it's pretty bad, it's 16%, and I also live up there.
Yeah.
And you hear a lot of teachers getting laid off and professional people getting laid off, but they have their own little, that's a different state, that's their own little ideas. You have Texas that's completely different. They're doing pretty good because they didn't follow all the little things. Their governments didn't grow and they spend governments. Over here, the people that I know that are hurting are basically the construction people and the people in that kind of industry.
Okay, so now let's get to Michigan. What part of Michigan are you connected to?
South Haven.
Which is
this,
is that up?
It's southwestern part. There's Lake Michigan over here. Detroit's on this side. That's on this side.
It's over there on the lake or near.
Blueberry Farm. We're 9 miles from the lake.
Did you say a blueberry farm?
Yeah, we have.
Wow.
My
Okay.
wife and I own a blueberry farm. I have 9 acres on a river with a beautiful home that I built 4 years ago for her.
That's great. Well, so can now you talk a little bit about how the world looks from on the ground on your blueberry farm?
Michigan is completely different. Michigan made a mistake a long time ago. They went to bed with the big car industries instead of going to bed with small business, which I truly believe in. You've got to work with big corporations and with government, but 51% of all Americans at one time were employed by small business, and they didn't do that. They went to bed with a big industry over there, which is a car industry. They made a mistake in 1990, and then they made the mistake again. And then it's a very liberal state that believes in basically that to give everybody a break down at the bottom of the scale. And when you do that, people tend to get lazy. And I truly believe in that because I've seen it. The more you give, the more they tend to say, okay, well, you owe me. It's you give them an inch and they want a foot. Oh well. I think The Economist had a story about that years ago about an African doctor and a guy on welfare in West Virginia. And they showed how both complain about their government. But the guy in West Virginia had a trailer where they were giving him food stamps, they would pay for his rent, and he was still bitching. And then the African guy he was blessed because he had a house with 11 of his family members in there, and he had for the first time a bathroom with running water. But it was outside, but it still had running water. And he couldn't believe it, but his government still stole from him. But he was blessed. The guy in West Virginia wasn't blessed because can you believe I can't even give a quarter liquor anymore? I can't even afford it. That's the philosophy, that's the difference. And that's what happens. I see a lot in Michigan, that they just gave and gave because it became real liberal. They went to bed with these big corporations, Ford, GM, and whatnot, and then at the same time they decided to give, and you can't do that. You've got to make people stand for themselves a little once in a while. You give to someone that cannot produce. You give to someone who's handicapped mentally, physically. But if you start doing the rest, hey, I grew up with a lot of these guys here. You start doing that, a lot of these people, they don't care. They want drugs, alcohol, and loose shoes, fast women, and a warm place to shit. That's basically the philosophy that one of those guys said about certain kinds of people. But that's true in society. You start doing that, and if you start giving away things to people that basically don't have the gumptions to go out and work, they're going to take it. They're just going to relax and don't say that I said loose shoes, fast women, and a warm place to poop. Knock that out. No, but that's what happens in Michigan. It's a big state with a lot of welfare, and you will get a lot of what we call Arkansas billies, because Arkansas does not give us much welfare, and we start seeing that. The only people that work, and believe me, when I tell you the only people we could hire, and that's whites, blacks, I don't care what, were the Mexicans, because they had a hard time. And needless to say, people say, oh, you don't treat them right. Bullshit. They were making $100 a day picking blueberries. A Mexican will not work for you unless he makes $100 a day. I mean, they work like dogs, but they know how to pick. I can put myself in there and start picking, and they'll be over there with 3 bags, and I'll have one little bag. See? My wife can keep up with it.
So you're farming the whole 9 acres?
No, I'm farming 30 acres.
Oh, 30 acres.
We have a 40-acre farm, and we're farming completely 30 acres. Then I have another 9 acres, which I have a house on.
Okay.
By a river.
So the farm, how many people do you employ?
I don't employ anybody. I used to do a lot of the work, and then blueberries came really good, so my wife said, you're an owner now, quit, because I was complaining a lot, and I had to work here and go over there and fix a tractor and spray, and we usually now we have vendors that do it all. She hired her brother's people to do it all. We have a plane that sprays now. We have his farm picks. He has Mexicans working for him. They do the picking, which it's mostly machine pick, but this year, because of the prices, we went with hand picking. In the old days when I did it all, not all of it, but a lot of it, from 91 until I'm going to say 2002, I hardly ever made any money. The few times that I did, it was just to pay off bills. But that's the way I am. I like to pay my mortgages off.
Mm-hmm.
And, try to get rid of all my debt. Debt is great when you're buying things. Debt is terrible to hold. And I've always thought that debt was great I've owned a lot of properties, over 100, and a lot more than 100. And I still own over 60. And what I try to always do is try to have debt to buy them, but try to get rid of that debt from the income that I make out of whatever income to pay it off.
Uh-huh.
And then that way those properties start producing for you. And then when you do sell them, you not only did you get a return on your investment, but now you're making a lot of cash.
Right. How are things in the blueberry business?
Last year was probably horrible, the most horrible year we had, because like everybody else, they were not lending, the banks were not lending to McDonald's, Publix, whatever. It doesn't matter, just an entity. Mm-hmm. And the widget wasn't being able, they had no money to, all these big corporations work on borrowing from banks.
Right, and that's your biggest customer is
well, we work
or...
through MBG, which is Michigan Growers Association. We no longer belong to them because they're having problems now.
So all of the growers are giving to one big pool.
To one big pool, and they were selling that big pool, and when they didn't sell them, we have left MBG. Even though they don't want us to leave, we've said forget it, because we now know we've gotten with 2 other growers that know how to sell it. And now we're taking our fruit and going to either other growers that have a relationship with a big buyer, such as a McDonald's or whatever. I'm just throwing McDonald's in because it doesn't mean that we're doing what I just can't tell you who they are. And they have gone to them and sold to them, so we're getting a higher price because we have very good fruit. We know how to take care of our fruit. We don't overspray, we don't underspray. And when you're in a co-op, You have a lot of guys that cheat and cheat in the wrong way. They don't want to spray because spray, everybody says, oh my God, all these farmers are basically poisoning the land. Well, the only one that would poison it would be corporations because they like to overspray. Little farmers, they do the least possible they can. Mm-hmm. And what we try to work out, it was a plan to do it right. We said, what does it take? We don't go out there and I would look at the plants, or my wife, or we hire somebody to look at the plant. If you had a disease, then you spray. Okay? If you didn't have one, you don't spray. Mm-hmm. That kind of deal. You're supposed to lay down 300 pounds per acre of fertilizer. We did 2100 to get away from the phosphate. But what we did is, instead of doing it all at one time, we would do it when the flowers first came out and halfway through it, or at the end of the flowering period. And that way you're not putting it all down at one time, and a lot of it's going to leach away. So you're doing it the right way. Well, if you're a big corporation, you got 10,000 acres, you're just going to do it every 7 days, no matter what. And if you're a little guy, a lot of these little guys, except the professional guys out there, and now we have hired her brother, they're very professional, they know what they're doing, and I don't have to deal with this anymore. The problem with last year was the prices, was the banks not lending money, so they sat on $1 million to make sure the exact figures. I think it was 10 million pounds for a whole year. Mm-hmm. And now they claim they sold it all, MBG, which they still have some of our crop. Mm-hmm. This year's crop, we don't have it with them. We have it with her brother, and he sold them all, or she did, his wife, through another farm called Peterson, who's attached with somebody big. And so we're getting better prices this year, but we got killed last year. The year before last, we were doing great, and that's why my wife basically fired me, because she said,
"So is the is the variation from year to year in that industry? Is that typical? It's just going to go like that."
People, everybody will tell you, "Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's not a farmer, a true farmer like some of those guys. They've been at it for 40 years." But the thing that I've seen in farmers per se, guys that have been in the business forever, they know a lot about what to do. The problem is they have amnesia. They forget. They've gone through bad periods. Like, I don't forget in real estate. You see what I'm saying? So why don't you guys pay off your loans? Why do you guys buy another house? Why do you guys buy 2 more tractors? Why don't you pay off what you got? Or if you're going to upgrade it, pay it cash while you're making money. Because everybody thinks of that same idea. Well, the bank's willing to let me do it. This is their philosophy. If I go under, they go under. And then when they do go under, then they have a problem. I don't see the old farmers of Michigan going under, because a lot of them have changed their ways from the 1990s, because they had major problems in the 1990s. But I see the new guys doing that. There were a lot of new guys that bought into the industry, just like we went when we did real estate. In the last 4 years, you had all these guys borrowing money right and left that had no business. There's a lot of people in this country should never own a house. They don't even know how to take a plunger and plunge a toilet. So they have to call a plumber to go plunge their toilet. You can't afford it if you don't work on certain things in your house. There's certain people that only make a family of 40,000. They have 3 kids. They shouldn't own a place unless the guy knows what he's doing. Unless he knows how to fix a little roof when he has a roof leak, unless he knows something about maintenance or managing his household, managing his financing. And you don't. And it's better if you rent. Why not rent? Oh, well, the taxes. You don't make enough money to take taxes. Take a hit on your taxes. Well, it's because we'll own our home. That's only if you're going to do that, and you're going to make and you know how to fix your own things, and you're going to be married for the next 40 years, which your chances are very little in today's America, at least being married once only. And the other thing is, if you're going to own your home, not every 6 years like most Americans, but for a long time, because you're only making 40 or 50 grand a year between you and your wife. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's it. Mm-hmm. So you need to make that commitment to a home. People don't make commitments to home. They bought farms in Michigan like they bought real estate over here. Oh, well, the prices go up. I may sell it and just make a mint. You don't know what you're doing. You have no clue what you're talking about. That's okay if you buy it and you sell it immediately. I've seen turn and burns. That's fine. You get caught in a turn and burn, and you're going to be playing the game.
Right.
Game's over. But a lot of these guys who are doing it, we're holding for 2 years, or we're buying because my home will go up, and they have no clue in what it is to do anything. You should buy a home only when you can afford it, when you can do a lot of the maintenance yourself, when you make yourself a plan that this is my long-term plan. It's not like most people now that their short-term plan is to win the fantasy, the long-term plan is to win the lottery. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to make plans.
Right.
And
what plans did you make? I'm interested in where you are now. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Gainesville, but I was born in Cuba, and
Mm-hmm.
I came over here when I was 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Miami and came to Gainesville in '61, and then I grew up in Gainesville.
Uh-huh.
And I think everybody's different in that sense. I never knew this, but I have a philosophy about everything, and one of them, one's about marriage, one's about business, and one's about life. And my life philosophy came at the end, and I don't know if I heard it from somebody else, which I'm sure I did. This didn't come out of my own idea. I'm not a genius. But I think that if you do the right thing in life, if you invest in yourself physically and mentally, and you follow your dream, you will always make it. The thing is that I never knew what my dream was. I always loved astronomy. I always loved marine biology, and I always loved to make money in real estate because my dad was in real estate in Cuba. In '74, I got out of the Army, and he had a chance to buy this office. And what I tell people, he knew nothing because I was in Cuba. He knew nothing, and I knew less than nothing. But he was a great salesman.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm not a great salesman. I know how to do books. I know how to keep a business going. But I'm not a great salesman. But you don't need to be a great salesman, because I came out with another one of my philosophies, which was, in order to run a business, you have to do 4 things. And again, I don't know. I can't tell you that I found this out. I came out this. I might have read it here and read another part there, and I put it all together. And my philosophy is that you have to have the work ethics, because if you don't, you better not own your own business. You have to learn how to borrow money and how to pay it back. And a lot of people don't know how to borrow money. And I'm not talking about the mafia where they're going to break your legs. Number 3 is you're going to have to learn every facet of that business somehow, some way. Not that you need to know it, just that in case you need to know it. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You need the taxes, you need your licenses and things like that. And last but not least, I truly believe this, that the bigger you are, the more you have learned how to delegate authority. If you see the guys that are multi-billionaires, delegating authority to me is not telling you how to work. It's to creating a dream, or either paying you so much money that you're going to bring back more money than I'm investing in you. And that's, the guys that are really big know how to do that really good. I don't. Mm-hmm. But guess what? I think I've done pretty good. So
when you think back to when you were, say, 18, 19, 20 years old,
I didn't want to be poor.
Okay, but did you have a sense of what your future looked like? What was your idea?
I was in the Army. I think that's the first time I had a sense of what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And I realized and I was an idiot, but I knew that I didn't want to be an idiot. And I knew that I didn't want to be poor. Those are the 2 things, and I don't know how it came about. The Army taught me that socialism doesn't work. We had 1 typewriter. We had 6 guys in White Sands Missile Range fighting over a typewriter. And I would tell the captain once in a while, "Captain, look, I'm bored out of my mind. Would you let me type?" And he goes, "No. Cranfield, this other guy, can type 80 words a minute. You can type 45. Get lost. Go out, get drunk. You're free. You know, you're doing this for a year and a half. We're not going to Nam. This is 71. We're stuck in a middle desert. What do you do? Alcohol. Thank God there weren't a lot of drugs. If not, it would have been drugs. We had a little bit, but not excessive. It was smoking like a fiend. It was smoking, I forgot how much it was, 23 cents a pack. Beer was 80 cents for Coors out west. Everybody, Coors.
Where was this base?
White Sands Missile Range, New Mexico.
New Mexico, okay.
and that taught me that I didn't want to be a social. I said, this doesn't work, and I want to have money to be free, and it doesn't matter where you live. It matters where you live. Where if you're close to your family, I think that's a good idea, and a job that you enjoy. And then the other side of the mountain, you can always go to the other side of the mountain and see the green stuff. You know, I was lost soul at that time. I kept saying, we did acid a few times. Oh yeah, we in the desert. And I think that's how I came up with some of these ideas. You don't have to say that, but I think, you know, sitting there doing psilocybin.
Looking at that night sky in New Mexico, right?
We were, and I'll never forget that. We had psilocybin, which was a mushroom. And we sat there and I'm looking up and I spent the whole night just talking to myself in this mountain like this, like, you know, of sand, pure sand, white sand, whitest sand you've ever seen. And maybe that's where I came up with these, this long-term plan. So but I still didn't have any clue.
Right. So from the time that you were discharged from the Army till, like, how many years go by before you're actually in a place where you're starting to build something?
I came back over here and I started going to Santa Fe, and I had gone to New Mexico State for 1 1/4 in those days. And I knew that I had it inside of me that college was for my brother, but not for me. You know,
did that idea come from your family, or was that your own?
My mom was always, if you don't get a master's or a PhD, or you don't have a great business, you might as well give up, because life's going to crap on you all the time. My mom grew up with a family of 9.
In Cuba also?
In Cuba, and they all had degrees. They all had PhDs. Not one of them except one that was a doctor. They all were PhDs. And she married my dad, and he didn't have a degree, but he had a business. Mm-hmm. And we won't get into that, but he had like 3, he was very good in Cuba, and we had a lot of money and all that. It doesn't matter. He didn't have it when we got to Gainesville. We were broke. So you have this pressure of going to school. And I had already gone to school 1 year, but it wasn't doing anything for me. I mean, some guys can go to school and really get into the teaching, and they really can get into the teachers, and they can really get into the books. I give my brother a lot of credit, because he can read a book and can remember everything. You know, I mean, it's just I went here, pass the test, and get it over with, and then forget about it. Now I love it. Matter of fact, I've taken a class in physics because I do astronomy on the side, and I love it now. But I did in those days, and so I got out of it, got to Santa Fe. I decided to get strong, and I went into the construction business. I started digging a ditch for Hoyt Edwards and Fisher Company they were digging ditches all over, laying down cable lines for telephone lines from here to Lake City. And I thought that was great. Then I went to work for a developing corporation, Emmer, and I really liked that because we were landscaping. Mm-hmm. But I really liked them building the home. And I went, wow, this is great. And then I got to talk to a couple of guys in there that were selling the homes, and I went, wow, this is, you know, here I am now, I'm 23 years old, and I'm going, this is something that I really like to do. And that's when my dad was working for Mabel Gore. And he said, Mabel's getting sick and she wants to sell her business. And he said, I think I can buy it without any money down. And I said, man, can we afford it? I don't have any money. And he said, your mom will pay for it. Comes to worst. And we started in 74. Uh-huh. And I ate peanut butter and jelly every day, except when I went over their house, and I got married, and I went over her parents' house. First time I was married, and then I told him, I said, I can't sell. I've been at this a year and a half. I've sold in 18 months. I sold 12 homes. I said, I'm starving to death. My dad was selling here and there, and I said, the office, we're working 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week for a paycheck every month and a half. I said, no, this is not working. Well, like I said, my dad's a great salesman. He had these 2 Latin guys that were doctors, and he had talked them into little complexes, little 4-unit. And I said, and one of them said, why don't you manage it for me? And my dad had the one, and I said, hey, let me talk to the other one. And he said, I'll talk to him. And we got the other one. And I said, can I move in and clean the yard and do the roof and clean the steps and for free rent? He said, no, how about $25 a month? and I did it, and then I got another one, and then he got one, and then we got up to 1,000 units by 1980. In 1979, we had 1,000 units, and then I went crazy, and then that was too much. We learned on the job. It was on the job learning, and then then you start taking classes. Everything that I know I did wrong. I tell people, how do you know that? Well, I did it wrong. So you learn from your mistakes, and that was one of the greatest things in those days. And we were just, we got sued here and there, but it was minor. We never made a major mistake. And I think if we did, people understood we were honest. So we worked it out. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Today, I would hate to see that because some of these people are crazy. And all they want to do, they think you got money, they want to sue you. But in those days, you could work it out a lot easier. And if you did make a major mistake, like allowing a tenant they ask you not to put in there, or you had a roofer do a roof and the roof caved in for whatever reasons, or you forgot to get them insurance when they asked you to get insurance, you bought the insurance, you went out there and got another roofer and paid half of it, you worked something out. So, and today, that's a little bit harder.
Yeah. You've been really generous with your time. Let me ask you one more question. You came from Cuba in the late 50s?
59.
59, at age 9. What do you think is the biggest change you've seen in your lifetime?
Besides myself, and I think I saw people being poor, and no matter what they tell you the economy is today, the lifestyle we live today is 1,000% better than in the 1960s. If you look at 1960s, 1970s, overall, I'm not saying you or you, overall, it doesn't matter what people complain. I have seen, we would die for a dime. You don't see that as much. And the other thing is, I think I've seen crime a lot higher. Those are the two things that I've seen. We never used to lock our doors in Gainesville in the 60s until probably in the early 70s, 68, 69. And now we do. And now I've got, security system. Had to have bars here. We never had bars here before. I had to put them up now because I would get break-ins. And that's what I try to tell everybody that I talk to, why in Gainesville we need to have jobs, if you don't mind me saying this last thing, because we have a population that always gets bigger. If you don't create jobs, what you're doing is the people that have the jobs will keep their jobs. The people that come in, we have a lot of prisons around, and we have people being born every day. If you don't create jobs for them, half decent jobs where at least they can go up in the ladder. What you're doing is you're creating a bunch of people that feel like they have nothing to do. So when you cut back in the University of Florida, and then small business starts cutting back, all you're doing is creating socialism where you give out either crappy jobs like I had in the Army, six guys to one typewriter, and what do? Then you start doing drugs, you start doing alcohol, and these people start breaking in. And those are the two major changes that I've seen. I've seen the economy as a whole, no matter how bad it was. In the 90s it was great, and I got to give Clinton a lot of credit. No matter what you hate about Bush, you got to say it was very good for a while for a lot of people in this country. And even today, since we didn't go into this depression, it is not as bad as the 70s lifestyle and the 60s. I will say the crime has gotten worse. Those are the two things that and it's not only the crime, it's the idea that, you can do it, and they're, like I said, do the right thing. People just, and I blame that on parents a lot. It's not on society as a whole. It has to be with the parent issue. I think it has to do with that. You can get divorced and still love your child and go see your child all the time and take care of your kid. And I got divorced, now I've got a kid, and she may be a lot of things, but she's not a bad kid. She's 30 years old and she's a good person. And I think that's what you need to do, and you don't see that. And families break away, they hate each other to death, and one guy won't see the other kid, and the kid gets really screwy. And I think that's basically it.
Thank you so
hope
much.
I helped you out in some way there, but
yeah,
keep some of those things out that I said.
I will. You know what? I will. There are certain things I know that you want cut, and I will cut them not because I want to protect you, but 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 because I want to.